Are you a small business owner that is confused over your accounting records? Accounting by Art can help you eliminate this confusion with a free initial one on one consultation. Art offers QuickBook training seminars, covers both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, as well as addressing your specific needs and questions. Visit accountingbyart.com and set up your free consultation today. Confused about your personalized mailers for your business needs? Specialty Mailing can provide all services for your mailings from start to finish. Call 1-888-534-4514 or visit them on the web at specialtymailing.com. Welcome to Real Live Marketing. This is Barry Coziahr. So today's show is going to be about podcasting as a marketing tool. So podcasts are pretty fascinating. This is actually a podcast that you're listening to. And the origin of podcasts comes from back in the day when we used to have a thing called an iPod, where people would download their music, and these are the devices people would strap onto their belt or their arm, and they'd listen to various music as they worked, or as they were jogging or exercising or doing other activities. Also, part of that era was a thing called podcasts, which were short recorded broadcasts, usually put on a regular schedule on some sort of specific subject. Podcasts range anywhere from marketing, like the show that you're listening to here now, to gardening, movie reviews, TV reviews, etc. Any subject you could possibly think of might be covered by a podcast. Finance, better organizing your personal life, dating, gossip, celebrity news, you name it, a podcast could cover it. The power of a podcast for you as an expert is for you to help others with your knowledge, to place yourself in their mind as a thought leader. You know, a thought leader being the kind of person who leads people into action through their ideas, that spreads their ideas, and as a result, people take action. You can actually put yourself in this position. You position yourself as an expert, which, hopefully you are, or you're becoming even more of one. And that's the whole idea behind doing this. The other side of it as a marketing tool is you as an individual can use podcasts to stay up on trends. You can stay up on your particular profession, on marketing tools, or other aspects of business that you may not have time to study up on. This is a great marketing tool. Knowledge itself is a marketing tool. It actually helps you to get ahead in life. I mean, the top CEOs on the planet, I hear, read about 60 books on the average a year. The average American, on the other hand, doesn't even finish a book. He reads like 0.7 books a year. So knowledge is a key tool and obviously can help you to move up the ladder of success by gaining that knowledge. And podcasts are a good, easy route for you to do it. Instead of listening to music in your car, you could be listening to a podcast. You could actually, take advantage of podcasts to get in some exercise time. Go and exercise while you listen to a show or two. This is a great use of time, a great way to actually genuinely multitask in an effective manner. So later in the show, I'm going to give you two things that I'm doing to develop my interviewing skills, and two things I think that you should do if you're going to become a great interviewer in podcasting. And I hope you enjoy our show today. Our guest is Mike Wilkerson. He has a podcast and podcast network called Two Guys Talking. I think you'll enjoy what Mike has to offer. He is definitely effectively monetized his podcasts, not only his personal show, which he'll tell you the whole story about, but he's branched out into other shows and is helping others to produce and direct their shows. He gave me some great tips while he was here, and I'll pass on a little bit of additional things of what I've learned, again, about becoming a great interviewer, which I'm working on, and developing that skill. I'll give you that a little bit later in the show. Hey, before we get actually started in the show, I want to tell you about a couple of my clients. One is a company called Specialty Mailing. I'll tell you, if you're in need of direct mail services, in other words, you got some postcards, you get a mailing that needs to go out, and you need somebody to give you the best possible price, organize it, do it right. Specialty Mailing are the guys that'll do it. They're your direct mail solution provider. They also offer digital printing, which means you can personalize everything, the name and the letter, the amounts that you're asking people on an individual basis. You can you can personalize various aspects of the individual mailings. So they're very much targeted to that person, and they actually don't look just like another direct mail piece, but they look like they're meant for that individual. So they're able to do that, and they can provide all the other services that for your mailings from start to finish. By combining both printing and mailing services, they can save you a lot of money on postage. So mention this ad, and they'll give you 25% off any purchased list data, or if you're providing your own list, they offer free national change of address processing. You can go to specialtymailing.com, or you can call 1-888-534-4514. That's 1-888-534-4514. Or visit them on the web. Get started now. Direct mail does not have to be a headache. Just get in touch with these guys and put them to work for you. The other customer that I wanted to mention is Art Stump. His company is Accounting by Art. And I'll tell you, accounting is about the last thing I want to do. But it's a big necessity in a business. There's a lot of reasons that your accounting has to be straight. If you feel lost at all regarding bookkeeping or payroll for your small business, Accounting by Art, they actually offer a free one-on-one consultation for the state of your business. They'll go over the state of where things are with you. Just talk to you. 1 hour for free. Art has years of experience helping small business owners with their accounting needs. He also offers QuickBooks training. I know a lot of people are using QuickBooks out there. He gives seminars on it, covering both QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, as well as addressing specific needs and questions. Anybody who comes to his seminars, they also get a free 1 hour office visit after the class to be sure their QuickBook issues are solved to their satisfaction. So all you have to do is mention this ad at your consultation, and you'll get 10% off, by the way, any initial services when you sign up and pay for the first month. So visit accountingbyart.com, sign up for your free consultation. Just sit down and talk to Art. You'll be glad you did. All right. Enjoy our interview with Mike Wilkerson of Two Guys Talking. We're here with Mike Wilkerson. And I know you've got Two Guys Talking, which is a podcasting show and network.
It's a network first and then a series of programs underneath it.
Great.
Yep.
That's great. Well, can you tell us, just give us a little bit, if you could, give us your short little bio of yourself.
Sure. I am a currently 44-year-old man with an 11-year-old daughter and a gorgeous wife. I have been in St. Louis now since 1993. I would never have thought I would be in St. Louis. I was born in Tennessee. I migrated all over the United States because of my father and his hunting for jobness. We landed in Schaumburg, Illinois for a long period of time. I then went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I came to St. Louis and have been here since then. A variety of education, all kinds of perspectives. How you tell me how, because I'm going to run right through your questions.
No, I'm interested. Yeah. So tell me education-wise.
Sure. So I didn't like school. I didn't like school until my first year of college. Isn't that strange? I love interacting with teachers. I love projects and stuff. But the way that school stuff works, in particular my time as an interpreter, allowed me to really see other kids that I think were in the same boat as I was. I love projects, and I really do believe that we need to change the paradigm of how we teach kids, because it's got to be taking what is your skill set and interest set and pushing that towards a completion of a project of some kind.
Sure.
As opposed to, here is a stack of books, let's begin reading.
Right.
That was a giant turnoff for me. I'm not a big reader. One of the podcasts on our network is based on knowing what happens inside of a movie, knowing what happens inside of the 500-page book so that you don't have to read it. That's something I wanted that when I was a kid, because I want to know what happens and I want to know the lessons, but I don't want to read a 500-page book to find out what the deal is. I just want to know. I just want to find out.
So where'd you end up going to school? You went? Did you go to college?
I did. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison inside of Wisconsin. Migrated from there to the University of Milwaukee, where I got my specialized degree in educational interpreting. That is sign language, for those of you that are curious.
Oh, so that's what your interpretation.
Yeah,
you did sign language.
There's no doubt about that. As I got through high school and met and interacted with lots of hard of hearing and deaf people, that my love of language blossomed.
Great.
I owe everything I have to sign language.
Great. Could you demonstrate for the audience?
Sure I can. What would you like me to show you?
That was great.
Now, it doesn't work inside of podcasting so much. It's not so awesome, but but that has not only brought me a lot of happiness and joy, but it's brought me a large, wonderful vocabulary that I love to spill onto people, and language and the way people talk and accents and all of that has always fascinated me because it's so much fun.
That makes sense. I mean, the interpreter, I was thinking that you had to study language, but you're a visual guy. Mm-hmm. So sign language is an obvious. Yeah.
Context or something else that comes out of not only just sign language, but interpreting as well. Because there are modes inside of language, in particular sign language. There's not just and now I will speak sign language. There is a spectrum of sign language as well that is, signing every single word for word, to what are just the concepts of what's being conveyed. There's a very populated video on Facebook currently, and it's a couple of people singing the "You're the One That I Want" from Grease song while they're driving in the front seat of their car. And somebody asked me, are they doing that right? And I said, well, right's kind of relative in regard to sign language. Are they conveying some of the words that you would use to sing that? Yeah. But are the concepts the same? Not really. Because "You're the One That I Want," well, I would sign "I Want You." Mm-hmm. That's the sample.
Slightly different.
Yeah. So it's context based. In particular, when you get into American Sign Language, it's all context as opposed to what someone is actually saying. So I'd listen to you say a sentence, I would grab the context and convey it in American Sign Language.
And then the facial expressions have anything to do with the huge in sign language? I would think that because you're conveying a tone with your face while you're saying words with your hands. Yeah,
it is extraordinary. In fact, a lot of things can be conveyed by facial expressions alone that would also change what you say when it's voice interpreting for somebody. Mm-hmm. So if you were expressing sign language and telling me what you want me to tell someone sitting next to me, okay, well, based on your facial expression, the message can change.
Right. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. You would think you'd see more use of sign language in like YouTube advertising and things like that. That'd be kind of an interesting, that's what I think of immediately.
Well, and acting, that falls into acting as well. So.
Yeah, it would be a good marketing tool. I mean, body language has a lot to do with it, I'm sure. Yeah. And the way you move your hands, the speed at which, I imagine if you're moving your hands faster, you're yelling. Is that true? No. I guess the sample there would be speed came in a lot when I was interpreting at SLU for a veterinary student. And they were talking about how the Krebs cycle works and a bunch of other really cool, awesome things. That glean of knowledge that I know I will never use, but now can draw back on instantly. I love that about interpreting too. It's where I would go and get 9 and 10 degrees, but none of them were my degrees, and I didn't have the paper. So, very, very, a lot of fun. Yeah. And then you also, so now you work in, you've got, your podcasting network. Mm-hmm. And then you also you're also in computers, right? I work at a computer company. I am the official "we forgot this project" guy. So finding quick solutions that work and migrate into their place. That I love that, and it helps me infinitely inside of Two Guys Talking. That's great. All right. Well, great. Well, we're going to talk about podcasting. Yeah. And so basically, like podcasting as a marketing tool, because that's what real live marketing is about. So what? I want to talk about what is and what isn't podcasting.
Okay.
And just take it away. Tell us.
Well, I will deliver my official disclaimer that everything I talk about inside of podcasting with you is definitively influenced and waxed over because of what I do with Two Guys Talking.
Okay.
A podcast, you have to go and find the definition of that on the internet. In fact, inside the show notes for this episode, why don't we link to that?
Okay.
What the official definition of podcasting is. And all podcasting is, asterisk for us, is it's captured perspective. Whether it's Barry and his infinite knowledge of marketing and awesome website sellingness, or it's Mike Wilkerson and his stuff that he brings to the table in regard to interpreting, or the guy that is in love with music and going to find musicians that people haven't yet heard of, or someone's intrinsic zeal for Star Wars and the characters and the stories that people don't know inside the books about Star Wars. All of those things are perspectives, and that's what we use at Two Guys Talking to use as a captured perspective.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, because everybody's got their perspective, their viewpoint, those things that are important to them. And this gives them an opportunity to do that, either as a guest or as a host.
Yeah.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, what you mentioned earlier that a podcasting is not a radio show.
Yeah. And it's trying to get over the speed bump and hump of, okay, so you failed in radio. Why don't you try a podcast? There is still a ton of that out there. And what I would tell people is that podcasting is not the dredge for those that fail inside of radio, but it is also not a one-to-one. So radio doesn't come onto the internet and instantly becomes a podcast. I don't believe that. In fact, I wish that there was another word that we could attribute to that is what we're making at Two Guys Talking. But if you think people give us the sideways cocked head when we say the word podcast, imagine their head when we would say something else that has no connotation.
Right.
So podcasting is what we've gravitated towards because there is a hold and a growing trend, totally, undeniably, on the internet in particular, about podcasting and how strong and powerful a tool it is, in particular in business.
It's interesting. I mean, I was talking to somebody at a radio station the other day, and they said that they had some guys who'd started with or were doing podcasts who'd now moved over to radio. Mm-hmm. And so I guess there is a movement there back and forth.
It's available. I would tell you, and this is from firsthand experience working with guys that are in and or now not in radio. Radio is a ridiculously volatile market. It always has been. It's a market where tomorrow you will be fired. It's really a matter of when as opposed to if. Mm-hmm. You can plan that you're going to be fired again, and whether or not you're going to be able to get on somewhere else is usually dependent on what you've done, your legacy as a radio personality, and in particular, how old you are. Mm-hmm. Because unfortunately, just like everything else, everybody wants the youngins. Where in podcasting, in particular, Two Guys Talking, I want the old folks. I want the people that have that seasoned, story-laden nature that I can go in and extract the stories, share that with an audience, and then get them paid to do it. And so radio people in particular that have been on at a place or were on at a place and they had to do the reading the news or be the morning chat guy because that's what he had to do. But always in the back of his mind, you know what he's wanted to talk about? Behind the scenes of baseball. Or, he was a pilot at one time. But what is he going to do with that on the radio? Well, the answer is inside of podcasting, you get to make a listing of stuff that you'd like to talk about. You make a series of episode listings, and you find something like twoguystalking.com to help you develop it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. How would you compare, your first podcast to what you're doing now?
Sure. My first podcast was conceived after I had a very successful blog, the 24 blog. And the 24 blog was talking about Jack Bauer and explosions and guns and stuff. And after every episode that aired on Monday, I would sit down and compile a bullet list of stuff that came up off of my brain, just little concepts or ideas. And I'd make that bullet list, and then we would share the bullet list inside the blog environment, and people would chime in and tell their thoughts of what I was thinking about. And I'd always choose something that was different as opposed to the same old, same old. And one day I took that bullet list and brought that to my 9-to-5, and a coworker and I had a conversation. And it was one of those conversations that you wanted to be able to go back and access again, except there was no way to do that. And so this bringing in the list went on for a couple of months, and we every single week we go, man, that was fun, and we better go back to work here because we got to get this done. And finally, one day at lunch, I said, let's go. He said, where are we going to go? We're going to go to my house. We're going to put on gaming headsets. We're going to capture the conversation we have. I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we're going to capture it. And so very much that's what it was. We would sit down, and that spawned a program called the Lunchtime Gab, in which was something talking about 24. And we were trying to limit it, and it just was impossible to limit. And so we eventually just sprung out the 24 podcast, 24podcast.com, and it turned into its own show. And that's when it started to evolve. I had a very successful blog. We had several hundred listeners via a podcast. Finally, iTunes had come out. We created this show thing called a podcast. And that finally evolved into, again, several hundred listeners. From several hundred listeners, we got an email from Mallorca, Spain. I'll never forget this. Got an email from Mallorca, Spain. And inside of the email was, I love your show. You talk about the things that I don't ever know anybody else talks about. And it's very much appreciated. Joseph Hodges, production designer, 24.
Wow.
Well, I thought it was a bunch of crap. I seriously, I thought it was one of our coworkers jerking us around. And I'm like, okay, hit the reply button. And I typed in, okay, thank you, Mr. Production Designer. It was not a complimentary email back because I thought it was just a bunch of hooey. Well, it wasn't. It was him.
Wow.
And so after several mea culpa emails, I asked him if he wouldn't mind coming on for an interview to talk about 24, in particular the aspects of 24 that I like to focus on. Sure. For those that don't know, a production designer is responsible for everything that you see on screen. Mm-hmm. So if it's seen on screen, it's either been concepted, touched, or is manipulated by the production designer. And so you can imagine the stories this guy has.
Sure.
And that's what got us into the thousands of people downloading our podcast, and it's the beginning of the engine. And it is the engine that now continues and do tens of thousands of people monthly inside of Two Guys Talking.
Yeah, well,
it's what propels the network, without question.
It's fascinating. I mean, he very much appreciated you appreciating what he did.
And that's when I knew that education element had to stay inside everything that we're doing. Because again, anybody can blather on about, oh, he's so cute and blah. And if it doesn't matter or lead to a sense of education, it's just a matter of time. It's a fuse and it will burn out. Where ours doesn't, because it's all education.
So yeah, it's a lot of things that I guess I didn't realize how much I could learn about the production of a show or a film. It sounds like I could learn a lot about that by listening to your show.
If it's not us that just learn because of our zeal to learn about either televised stuff or movie stuffs, you'll learn from the people that we have on. I dig deep for interview stuffs. One that we talked about recently was we just did our Lost Boys perspective review. Essentially what that is going back to Lost Boys, the film. And what we do is we revel in what we felt back then. And inside of there, we have an interview with the guy that actually wrote the Cry Little Sister song, G. Tom Mack. And, I can remember being in a car with my best friend at the time with the windows down, flying down the road to Madison, Wisconsin, and screaming that song at the top of our lungs. And here I am interviewing the guy.
It's pretty awesome.
It doesn't get any more awesome than that. It's a hobby that's turned into something that doesn't just educate people. It becomes a legacy in my life that my daughter gets to enjoy forever. And I love that. I love that aspect of what I'm doing.
That's great. Yeah, and you've put together a library, and you mentioned like other people can have your blanket of items, your whole list of items that you have a perspective on, and you begin to fill in and create your own personal library and refer back to that library and refer your listeners back to it. I mean, it's pretty fascinating. You get to, it definitely is a concept that we talk about, and my marketing talks is thought leadership. And so you guys are basically exemplifying thought leadership with your podcast.
Yeah, almost I would even say dragging people into thought leadership. I know that there are many people that have skill sets. Doesn't matter what it is, veterinarian, people that have been previous announcers inside of radio, a guy that is a former football player. Well, all those people have skill sets, whether it's the one they're known for or not, and a want to talk about and share their interest in those things. That is the key to what we're talking about. And then it's a matter of finding a company like Two Guys Talking that'll help you eke out all that stuff and then do all the heavy lifting, hard work for you.
Right. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, people, there are people that have quite a bit to say on different things, just on Facebook. I mean, they should have their own, like my mother-in-law, she's really into vitamins and nutrition. She's fantastic with it.
In particular for elders.
Yeah.
I mean, the laser focus will never hurt you because there's a way to always branch out from laser focus into something more. But focusing in particular inside of podcasting on what is a laser niche, not unlike your marketing focus. There's a difference between focusing on marketing tools and marketing, the giant funnel that is marketing.
Right.
And so it matters. It really does.
That's fantastic. All right, great. Well, what do you think if someone's going to use podcasting to market themselves to, as a host, what would you say are 5 things that you should definitely do, or and what the opposite of that is, what you should do instead?
Sure. So the most important part is to have a topic that anybody cares anything about.
Okay.
Now, that means it can be obscure.
Okay.
But there has to be some reason to do it. One of my favorites is, does anyone care what the texture of a pygmy marmoset is? Probably not. Because after you've experienced the texture of a pygmy marmoset, who cares? Right?
Right.
So,
which is a what, by the way?
Well, what's that?
What is that?
That's a small monkey/lemur.
Wow.
Pygmy marmoset. Star Trek reference, believe it or not.
Okay, all right.
So the gist of finding something that is laser focused but that can be branched out on, that somebody has interest in, that's where you've got to start. So what inside of your business is your good, solid money-making thing? Or what do you want to showcase you as an authority on inside of your business? That's where you can start with podcasting, and where you really should start with podcasting. The instant you start with something that's interesting, that will not only engage you to do it, but will engage other people as they listen to it, that's one of the super keys of podcasting.
Great.
The second thing, understand that starting does not start with a $sign. So the S and then the 2 slashes and a $sign doesn't start the word start inside of podcasting. I guarantee you that you will not be instantly making $1 gajillion if you too learn how to podcast. Doesn't work that way.
No.
You must build a library. That means you've got to create the shows. You've got to have the content. You've got to have a plan. And so just know that there can be and is potential money inside of podcasting. We have many monetized programs inside of Two Guys Talking. But it did not happen instantly at all.
No.
And will not happen instantly for anybody.
Good.
The third thing, have a plan. There is a difference between sitting at a microphone and knowing everything and it all just spilling out of your mouth and what's really going to happen. You must have a plan, even if it's a bullet point plan. You don't have to have paragraphs of stuff written out that you're going to sit there and read. There are many podcasts that do that,
right? But
they die very quickly, mostly because they get very boring and very static.
Scripted doesn't sound like a good idea to me.
There are so few people that can do it. Shelley Schneider over at lifeonthehalfshelley.com is one that can do it. And it's because it's engaging and you care. But it's a very, very difficult road to go. And if it's not something terribly awesome to listen to, it gets old very quick. Have a plan, have an outline. Are you going to have commercials or a break? Do you have any intention of monetizing the podcast? Is it just because you want to develop a podcast to have something you can show inside of your Facebook or YouTube channels for business? That's all got to be inside of your plan that you need to have before you start anything.
Sure. That makes total sense.
Yeah. Number 4, time. There is a difference between editing a podcast and having something that shines at the end and having something with a bunch of all of those things need to get gone. And whether that means that you actually learn to speak without them or you have somebody chop them out at the end, please do it, because it is undeniable speed bumps inside of your program. The average person in particular starting when podcasting is 53 umaras. We even call it the umara reel.
Wow.
That we present to new people. And it's because you've either got the awesome radio voice as you're bucking up to the microphone for the first time that doesn't make any sense inside of you, because most people are not that. When you're explaining your skill sets, Barry, do you go up to people and say, hello, I'm super duper Barry and we're going to be... No, you don't. It's a conversation that you need to have with the people across.
Right.
And so convey that.
Yeah, it's funny. People download my bio and read it before I come up and do public speaking, and they're reading it and they say, "Barry is an accomplished public speaker." I'm like, I really hate hearing that every time
yeah. Well,
right before I get up there to speak.
I don't have a problem with that. It's always bothered me with the label of either web designer or graphic designer for me. Mm-hmm. Those labels don't encapsulate what I provide for companies at all.
Sure.
And so I have them because I can then discern a salary.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But they don't convey in particular, the wide skill set that I can bring mm-hmm. between podcasting and model building and all kinds of marketing stuff. None of those titles encapsulate me. Right. So web content generator, that's much closer to what I would think would be a title for me. The problem is that except for me, that title doesn't exist. So anyway, back to time. Understand the time it's going to take to sit in front of a computer screen and edit something like an hour-long program or a 25-minute program. Right. Or the 15-minute program. That's something else to have, too, when you're thinking up your plan is, how long are you going to talk? How long can you talk in front of somebody about insert your topic? Because I know you and I could sit down and probably have an interesting conversation about the most recent Marvel superhero movie, and it would be great, and you could probably stand 45 minutes of it. Could you stand 3.5 hours of it? Probably not. Could you stand 3.5 hours of the texture of a pygmy marmoset? Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
Good.
The last thing. What are you gleaning from your podcast? Is it that you're able to leave that legacy that we talked about? You have another sales marketing tool that you can share with other people that are either not yet customers or are customers to bring them back to your website to help them sell other things inside of your website realm? What is that for you? Because you have to know that before you start. Because if you never get to it, will you continue podcasting? It's the dragon eating its tail sample. What is the benefit? And if you never find benefit, I guarantee you will not make episode 5.
That's interesting. I'll tell you one of the things you said about money, which particularly stuck with me, is even though you're not going to make money right off the bat, it's like I started doing public speaking thinking, well, you know what? I'm probably, I'm not going to make a lot of money doing this. But I know, and I was doing it as part of my business plan for my marketing business. But I knew that if I gave away knowledge and if I helped people, it would work out.
Yeah.
And then
you and I are in the same boat there. And I think we talked a little bit about that in our preamble too. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
There's a value into leaving a library of something people can glean something from. And that guides two guys talking. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it all works out. It'll come back to you, and we did, and it did come back.
Yeah,
and we a big part of our overall marketing strategy is just getting me out there doing education, and then we end up by meeting people that we can help with other marketing services.
Sure.
And so we do lots of free talk. They send me out to do free talks. I did 2 today. So
that's not unlike podcasting in general.
Right.
The fact is that someone will find something else inside of Two Guys Talking because they either heard from me about it. It's essentially the model for bringing a podcast aboard the network. Because do you want to start off as a ice cold podcast inside of iTunes, or would you rather start as though an ice cold podcast on iTunes, but that's tethered to a network with millions of downloads a year? Okay, well, you choose. That's not a real hard decision for me, in particular for someone that has a business mind and wants to sell their podcast and make money from it.
That's right.
It's a means to an end.
Right. No, it totally makes sense. Well, great. I imagine the shouldn'ts are basically the opposites of those.
Yeah. There are a couple we'll focus on, though. Why don't we start with number 1? I can do it all. Now, for many years, I did do it all. But it's because I had the goal and the incentive and then eventually the monetization that drove me to do it. Thinking that you can do it all is not realistic, in particular with what you can do now inside of podcasting. There are so many markets and avenues and directories and stuff that you can do, but you cannot do it all. I can't do it all currently now. It's why I've got employees. But the want to do it all is a big part of what gets you into podcasting, but it also becomes an instant boat anchor if you don't manage it. Number 2, surround yourself with other good people. There's a difference between dragging someone in to be the other voice on your podcast and bringing in people that add value. As much as you don't want to try and add value to your friends, you're going to find friends that don't have value. So please don't bring them on your podcast. It's not just about finding a voice. It's about finding another perspective that adds something to the podcast.
Sure.
There has to be something other than just a sounding post sitting across from you or talking to you via Skype or on the telephone via teleconference. They have to bring something into the conversation. Otherwise, it's just someone else yammering. Number 3, this is not radio. There are many podcasts that use the word radio inside of their title, and I totally get it. Look, I'm talking into a microphone and it's transmitted to other people. I'm on radio. Except that you're not on radio. Radio is a dying business. It is so incredibly volatile, in particular our city of St. Louis. The selling and acquisition of radio stations is beyond insane. I don't understand the business market of what is existing radio stations. I think that the magical numbers that are conjured, the sensors that are supposedly worn to detect who's listening to what radio station. Did you know that, by the way?
Mm-mm.
There are sensors that people wear on their belts to detect what radio stations people are listening to. That kind of sounds like a unicorn thing to me. You know the horse with the horn?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it kind of sounds like the same thing to me. That doesn't make any sense at all. So let me get this straight. You're sitting, let's say, in your car,
right.
And because you're listening or flipping channels, there's a sensor that somebody's wearing that detects. How does that work?
I don't know.
And how are those numbers collected exactly?
Right.
Downloads, on the other hand, of your podcast,
Sure.
it's a number.
Those are real
You get to go,
numbers.
hey, look, 600 downloads in the last 34 days.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Great numbers.
Mm-hmm.
That is another boon inside of podcasting that will instantly kill radio.
Right.
So just remember, this is not radio. Many of the things that happen and glide inside of radio, they don't work inside of podcasting at all. At least not the way Two Guys Talking does it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Number 4, you're not going to get famous. I have an audience. I have many people following me on Facebook and LinkedIn to the tunes of thousands of people. And I don't know hardly any of them. And I think that they pass me on the street. I'm not Brad Pitt. Let's be plain. So I'm not famous. I have a lot of people that follow me and listen to what I do, but I'm not famous. So get that out of your head too. You might have a following like I have. You might meet lots of other people that are connected to other things and connect through those things. That's what podcasting really does for you. But this is not the path to get famous. So don't, just like in radio, I'm in front of a microphone and I'm blasting out to 80,000 people, most of which aren't listening.
Right. I mean, there's some people that probably become famous from such an activity, but in the majority,
right?
That's not necessarily the purpose at all for doing it.
Right.
Yeah. Some people have to become the Howard Sterns of the world.
Yeah. When Howard Stern's mentioned a bunch, and that actually leads us to our last point. Don't swear. This is the big one. It's a perfect segue into the last thing that you should not do because it is an instant money killer.
I don't swear when I'm talking. I don't swear with customers. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny. I thought, oh, well, this is radio. I guess there's no censors. This is just your own private medium. I guess you could swear if you wanted to.
Absolutely. But and there are many explicit podcasts on the internet that get crazy traffic. I can't possibly deny them that. But what I can tell you is that instantly, when your podcast gets marked as explicit, you are cutting the nose off of your potential face to get sponsors or to find the monetization model. It doesn't help you. If you want to go get a bar or something that doesn't mind that you swear every other word, hey, you might have an opportunity to go that way. Right. But you know what's going to happen if you swing the other way and be valuable and you don't swear at all? Every door opens. Anybody that is at all interested in specifically your topic becomes a potential sponsor or someone that might give you cash because you do a good job. That all disappears when you begin swearing.
That makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't do it when I'm doing a talk. I wouldn't do it in an interview with a client. I wouldn't do it when I met a potential client.
Right.
I don't have a reaction to swearing when it happens, but that doesn't mean I want to create a bad reaction in somebody who may have a bad reaction to it.
Absolutely.
And it's not just, I guess, sort of the golden rule. I mean, I don't have a problem stuff happening to me. I kind of take it in stride, but I don't necessarily want to inflict that on somebody else.
Right. And one of the best samples I can think of, we also had, the program just ended, but it was True Blood on HBO, which is an adult program. There is lots of sex. There is lots of swearing in particular inside the last episode, there was a lot of F-bombs dropped. And the prior episode actually had the C word that was used. And we did quote that inside the podcast as well as the F-bomb because it was used inside the program.
Right.
So when referring to things inside of a program that are that, okay, that you get a pass on that. But just the adding of swear words to add on swear words instead of an adverb that you want to add someplace else, I'm not a big fan, and I wave off anybody that heads toward my network in particular about swearing, because it is an instant, no way am I going to sponsor this program because you said the word shit, because you said the word fuck, because you said because you said joystick. All of those things can all go away and stay in the realm of George Carlin, because they're awesome inside of George Carlinville, where they're not awesome inside of your potentially business-based podcast.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thank you. All right. So how often do you think that a person should have, I know like John Lee Dumas, he does his podcast daily, literally 7 days a week.
Yeah.
What do you think? How often should a person have their own personal podcast?
There's a little bit of behind baseball I want to talk about with John's program. Now, you have to remember that John spends a day recording all of the programs.
Right. He grows Monday, like all day Monday, 8 episodes or something like that.
Right. So he's capturing them all in one day, which makes all kinds of great, smart business. Do you need to have a daily podcast? The answer, I would tell you unequivocally, is no. Unless you plan on doing something that is a machine and podcasting is going to be a giant cog inside that machine, you do not need a daily podcast. Contracts that we base inside of Two Guys Talking are actually based on 12 episodes for 6 months. So we want at least 2 episodes a month so that we can make it look like we've got all kinds of awesome going on inside the network feed. You can always do more than that, but always plan at least 2 a month. Because in the span of 30 days, depending on what the model looks like, you can generate something that's quality, as opposed to sit down in front of a microphone, record for hours, and come up with a bunch of crap. Because we, and at twoguystalking.com in particular, don't make crap.
No.
There is a bar of quality that you must always remember, and that's the argument I have with Steve a lot is, got to be weekly, got to be going, got to be pushing out weekly. And he does a wonderful podcast. The problem is that I don't think people can hold up to that standard on a weekly basis. I don't think it's realistic unless you're doing it as a job, as an augment inside of a marketing program for a business. Then it becomes something that is not only paid, but there's reason, because if you don't do it, you're going to get fired.
Right.
Okay, well, then it's going to get done.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's what'll happen if I don't do my show weekly. I'll get fired.
Right.
I own the place. But
that's right. I forgot about that part. Sorry, Brett. So regularity, I always like to see at least a couple of times a month.
Yeah.
Long spans of time where you have nothing is not good for you.
It makes sense with a show like yours. You have thoughts that you're putting together regarding this episode or this show that you're reviewing, that you're talking about the aspects of. I mean, that takes some preparation. That's interesting. I mean, that's why, I've chosen the format that I'm choosing with a podcast is an interview format.
Yeah.
The idea being that I have a guest on and I've asked them to talk about something that they love as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
And so they get to talk about this, and so the emotion and all the learning that they've put into it gets to be expressed and communicated, and it makes it possible for me to do a weekly show, because I can just have I can interview guest after guest after guest,
well,
and they've been preparing for it their whole life.
Exactly. Right.
Whereas when you do a show, it's the two of you reviewing something, and you might have to. It may take you a couple of weeks to really put together all your thoughts with regards to it in order to sit down and express those in an entertaining show. So I guess it depends on the format of your show, whether you can have that or not.
Steve's is another really great sample where he's talking about legitimate concepts that help you save money that you make. It's great stuff. And there's always going to be a tip that will benefit people. So he's got a book of tips, and depending on how long or how many he wants to include inside of his program, he can go on for as many episodes as he wants, on and on and on. The difference inside of our stuffs is it's probably 45, 50 minutes where we're talking. There's some commercials, there's an intro, there's an outro. So all those things have to be programmed and plugged in.
How would you say that, what's the best or most successful way for somebody to use podcasting to create leads for their business, to create sales, to create repeat business? I mean, that's basically, when I talk about marketing, I know marketing has a lot of different aspects to it, but the tools that we're using, I basically approach it from the perspective of it's got to create repeat business, new business, sales. So how do you see this doing this for somebody who has their own show?
Sure. So a podcast, the great thing is that, again, at Two Guys Talking, we make it all library based. And one of the biggest things inside of businesses that is infinitely always library based is a frequently asked question set. Something, by the way, that's almost always completely missing inside of a website, which is terrible. Because if you could ask the people that answer the phones inside of any business, there's going to be probably 20 or 30 questions max that are the questions that wastes everybody's time. Not only the people that are calling, but the people that are answering the phones, or, let me put you on hold because Barry can tell you more about that. Or all of that time that the customer's waiting, all the time that your staff is wanting to share people, those could all be conveyed inside of a podcast set. So that is really, imagine anybody listening that wants to potentially start a podcast, imagine what the company has in regard to frequently asked questions.
That's true.
And every company has at least 10 that are a frequently asked question set. You start to get technical, like a refrigeration business, or, that gets crazy because you talk about parts and labor and whatever else is involved. Well, that instantly becomes a piece of a segment of a podcast. So if you're not talking about the specific skills inside of an industry that become episodes, you can use your frequently asked question sets as a foundation to build a podcast set.
That's great. You just gave me an idea for about 4 episodes.
I know I did. I know I did. And that's why I love talking about podcasting and marketing, because everything that I've got built as a model inside of what we've either done inside of Two Guys Talking or what we're going to make inside of Two Guys Talking instantly becomes a model inside of a business someplace. Dealing with those businesses that are looking for something that can be based on storytelling. And you go and you find the people that have the skill sets inside of your business and you ask them to convey the answers to questions.
Yep.
You will not believe the value that comes out of people. And it's a matter of somehow getting around a microphone being in front of somebody's face that will really change that.
That makes sense. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking that I might interview some of my staff for this show.
Sure.
And that makes so much sense, actually. And then
and pinpricking for skill set.
Yep.
You're absolutely right.
Right.
It also gives you a different voice inside of your podcast. Because while a lot of people want to transition to a video podcast, which there is a market for, don't get me wrong, but there are infinitely more opportunities, in particular for monetization with an audio podcast than there is with a video podcast.
That's great. Yeah, I've got my SEO, my person who focuses on SEO. I've got 2 people who focus on search engine optimization in the business. And it's I'll tell you, I'll give you a tip on one of the things, since we can tie it into movies.
Yeah.
This is an interesting movie. You're familiar with the movie Paycheck?
Sure.
Good. One of the main concept in the movie, it's based on it's Ben Affleck's in it, by the way, and it's based on a Philip K. Dick novel.
Yeah, we'll link to it in the show notes, by the way, too.
Great. It's pretty interesting, and one of the concepts in it is the concept of reverse engineering. And this is a big secret it really shouldn't be. It's pretty simple. Look at those pages that are ranking high, realize the rules have changed. So sometimes the older sites, just because they're ranking high, Google the new rules may not have caught up with those sites. But keeping those aspects in mind, you can actually reverse engineer a site and come up with how they got to the top of a search engine.
Right.
And so, and my wife is pretty brilliant at doing that and pulling it apart. And between me, her, and another person, we actually were able to do this reverse engineering with sites. And, if you're willing to pay for it, we can make sure to get you good ranking search engine wise.
And in particular, I want to add on that too, and realize that when you get on top, it's not and you stay on top thing. It's where you have to go back and there's maintenance. I want everyone to understand that too.
Absolutely. Yeah,
that is
absolutely.
one. I think that's, if there was gray matter inside of a particular search engine optimization, that's one of them.
Yeah.
Is that it's not a button and a now you pay the cash thing and woohoo, we're on top.
Yeah.
It's not instant and it must be maintained, as opposed to just, and we're going to stay on top forever.
Right. That would be a great show. That would be fantastic. So, all right, good. So a couple last questions as we wrap up here today.
Sure, fire away.
What's your biggest lead or sale or repeat sale that you feel like that you've gotten using this particular product, podcasting?
Sure. I'd like to mention 3, if I may.
Sure.
The first one is Sprint. Yes, that's Sprint. Sprint, in particular Relay Missouri, which is a faction of Sprint dedicated to hard of hearing and deaf people. It essentially provides them with video relay services, and they have been a sponsor since almost month one of me starting a formal podcast network, and they are just such an inspiration to me because I know that they have my back, and the messages and advertisements I convey really do make a difference.
That's great.
Yeah, that's the first one. We've also engaged in a new podcast called the Interpreter Toolbox, and the Interpreter Toolbox is where Mike Wilkerson, the former sign language interpreter, visits companies all over the place, talks about the vocabulary and sign language used in conveying those vocabulary words, and also offers a platform for those businesses to tell people about their business. That's a ton of fun, and that's also a Sprint sponsored effort.
That's great.
The second one is Pinnacle Entertainment. Pinnacle Entertainment is a small entertainment group. Well, no, not really. They're huge. And they're now sponsoring the Two Guys Talking Poker podcast. That's Vic Porcelli and Andy Kazin over at twoguystalkingpoker.com. The number 2guystalkingpoker.com, where they talk not just about the game of poker, but also about the experiences they have when they go to giant poker tournaments, whether it be in Vegas or here in St. Louis. It's becoming a terrific hotbed of poker entertainment in particular. The tournament numbers have now jumped up remarkably, both in attendance, but then also in how many times those happen inside. And we're super enthused to be working with both River City Casino, but also Maristar. And what I'd love to do is also get Lumiere involved, which is a different company. But Pinnacle Entertainment is another huge one.
That's awesome.
The other one I wanted to mention is Sovereign Arms. Sovereign Arms is not just a firearms dealer, but also the dynamic firearms training instructor service that teaches the guys like Jack Bauer from 24 how to be a Jack Bauer. Wow. All of the things that happen when guns fire, when there is a hostage situation, disarmament skills for people with knives, what to do inside of a hostage situation. That's what they specialize in. And they are an incredible resource for us inside of, in particular, perspective movie reviews. One that we did recently was the Matrix Perspective Review. And that is the complete and detailed review of all of the awesome guns inside of the Matrix. Just spectacular. It's where I get all giddy kid in a candy store. And he gets to tell us about all the guns and, you know, the not to bore you with the details, but, you know, what kind of rounds they fire, how much damage they would do in this situation. Would you really have used that gun, or are they just pulling out a gun because it looks cool? All of those things inside of, because you guys already know what happens inside of the movie. You don't have to talk to the stars. You want to hear about what happens in the contrast between what is the real world and the not so real world. And it's just it's a great informative podcast that you can find right now over at twoguystalking.com/matrix.
Awesome. I saw that on your header of your website.
Yeah, it is one of my favorites. I have so many.
Caught my attention. That's one of my favorite movies. Yeah. Great. Well, fantastic. So what do you think sets you apart from others who are trying to do podcasting? Why do you think you've been successful with it, whereas somebody else had it as a bright idea, but then they didn't follow through and actually turn it into something?
I think I can safely say we're one of a kind. And I don't say that like emo says we're one of a kind. I don't know anybody that spends the time on the things that we spend time on. So editing in particular, making sure that there is a bar of quality where it's not just a farm to bring people in to grab their money and then push them out with a podcast. I don't know another podcast network like mine where we actually build content. We've gone out and solicited people because we like their podcasts and we want to help them up their game. Mm-hmm. We've gotten those people too. But I don't know another entity like ours where people come in and they go, you know, I heard you build podcasts. Yeah, we do, from scratch. If you got nothing but sit down and talk time, we'll help you build a podcast. I don't know anybody else that does that. I know a lot of people that want to surround themselves with their own podcast and 2 other podcasts that they're on and then make a network. There's plenty of those. But that have a studio, like where you walk in and there is a physical studio with a computer lab and a classroom and a talent bay and an engineering bay, well, that is 2 guys talking. I don't know anybody else that does the span of things that we do, as well as the web development stuff that we do. But the podcasting stuff, I don't know another entity that does that.
That's great. Yeah, that's quality.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what you've done. Yeah,
that bar of quality is easily a giant stamp on our forehead, which we love.
And then you start doing it for fun.
Yeah. Well, and I still do it for fun. That's the best part. I don't like it when people tell me, find something that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. It's work. Don't get me wrong, but the finding of the stuff that fuels you, and podcasting fuels me. There's no doubt about it.
It's fantastic. All right, great. Well, good. So is there any resource or anything you'd like to share with the people?
I would point everybody to 2guystalking.com. That's the number 2guystalking.com. There you'll find everything that is Two Guys Talking, whether it's the web services or our now gaggle of podcasts that every single range currently. Well, there's something there for everybody to find something interesting.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Mike Wilkerson, for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Bear.
Take care. I hope you enjoyed that show. I'm going to give you a couple more tips regarding podcasting in just 1 second. But, I'll tell you what, I really feel that your website is your hub, right? All your social media. I'll tell you, 90% of the people, whether they're doing direct mail, whether they have your business card, whatever, they will go to your website before they call you. About 97%. Those are the statistics. So one of the services we offer is a free website evaluation to find out if your website is working for you to the degree it should be. My team actually goes through your website and evaluates all the major points from design to conversion to search engine optimization, etc. And they determine how you can improve your website to get more leads. Now, the evaluation that we do, you can have your people fix your website based on, what it is we find, or you can ask us to do it. It's really inexpensive. It's actually, only $99 for a website evaluation. It's ridiculously inexpensive. You can sign up right there on reallivemarketing.com. That's reallivemarketing.com. You can sign up right there on the homepage. Let's get this done for you. Let's make sure your website's working the way it should be and getting you the leads that it should be. Fantastic. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Mike Wilkerson. He's a great guest. He had a lot to say. And here's your 2 things that I think would help you. I know this would help you actually to become a great interviewer. Number 1, study and practice communication skills. Communication is basically what an interview is all about. It's what marketing is all about, honestly. Developing communication, studying communication. I recommend, call my office and I'll shoot you the direction of some great communication classes that I would say that there's no way I would be as successful in business today if it were not for these skills. Also, there's some fantastic books that you can study on communication. You can study what other people practice, listen to people, and see that the skills that they exhibit. This is vital. So study communication. And then the second thing, I would actually study the subject of interviewing. There are a lot of great articles out there, and you do have to sift the good from the bad. But sifting through that and reading and studying up on it, I think you'll gather, if you use common sense, you'll gather a really good idea of what you've decided you should incorporate into your interview style. And the second half of that studying about a great interview, becoming a great interviewer, would be to practice. There's nothing like practice. I know that this show and my skills as an interviewer are just going to get better and better as we go. Just because you can't help but get better if you do something. Just like being a writer. The advice I'll probably give later in one of my other shows on writing is the way to become a great writer is to write. So if you want to become a great interviewer or a great communicator, get out there and practice a lot, okay? Pay attention to what you do, study great people in the subject, and soon enough, you'll be great as well. Thanks for listening this week, and we'll see you next week on Real Life Marketing.